Hey folks, Armin here with FloElite, and today we are going to review a bunch of reviewed shoes for a giant review. We're not just talking one shoe, or two shoes, or even three shoes, not even 4 shoes, but 5 shoes! That's right guys, 5 shoes, mega review, ultimate review of all reviews. So we have our 5 shoes, and I picked these 5 shoes because I have reviewed each and every one of them, and each one of them is generally designed for the same thing, except for one pair, which I'll go into in a second. But here are the 5 shoes we're dealing with. We're dealing with the Reebok Nano 7s, the Nike Metcon III, the Nobull Trainers version 2, and the Nike Metcon DSX Flyknit. Holy crap, that's a long name for a shoe. And the Nike Metcon IIs. These shoes are designed for CrossFit, the Reebok Nano 7s. These shoes are designed for functional fitness. So they all kind of share the same general traits. They are generally a little bit flatter in terms of the heel height. They're generally a little bit stiffer in the heel so that you can lift weights in them, but also have some flexibility so that you can run and jump in them. They usually are really well made, especially near the arch, so that you can climb ropes in them. But which one of them is the best one of them? That's the real question. If you were gonna be spending money to buy a pair of shoes, which of these shoes should you be spending your money to buy? That is a very difficult question to answer, and we're going to jump in there and see what we can figure out. First things first, of these 5 shoes, the Metcon DSX Flyknit are very different, and they're different for a couple very specific reasons. And we covered this in the review for the Metcon DSX Flyknit specifically, but I'll go over it one more time. The upper on the DSX Flyknit is Flyknit, Nike's sock-like material, which means it's really, really flexible, really, really light, very breathable, but it's also not as durable as the upper on the Metcon 3s or on the Metcon 2s. And it also is more designed for a running type feel. And what that really translates into is a couple things. Compared to the Metcon 2s, the DSX Flyknit, the sole is a little softer both in the forefoot and in the heel so that you can actually run in a little better. These are still really stiff back here and not quite as flexible through the middle. So what does that mean? It means that if you are looking for a pair of shoes that is mainly for workouts that you're gonna be doing a ton of running in, these are a good pair. But we're looking at shoes that are designed for holistically an entire experience of fitness. And that means that these probably aren't gonna be your #1 bet, because let's be honest, none of us really like running anyway, and we're not gonna be running more than 400 or 800 meters at a time. And you can do those in pretty much any of these other pairs of shoes. That said, these are the most comfortable pair of shoes of the 5 up here. Mainly because they're really light, they're very flexible. The way that the Flyknit upper grabs your foot is really comfortable. It fits very nicely. These are very, very comfortable shoes, and during the time that I was reviewing them, I wore them pretty much every day, everywhere, whether I was at the office, going out, or working out in them, and they were very, very nice to me. Including, by the way, wearing them to Wadapalooza, where I was walking 6 or 7 miles a day, and they were easily the most comfortable pair of shoes I've worn at an event like that in a very long time. We also have another pair that is very comfortable but designed slightly differently. Now you'll see the Metcon 2s, the Metcon DSX Flyknit, the Metcon 3s, the Reebok Nano 7s. All of these have kind of like a busier design compared to the shoe that's in the middle right here. The Nobull Trainers are a very simply designed shoe, but they're designed also very smartly. And what we have is this one-piece upper, which is very different than the other shoes that we have up here. This does a couple things for us. One is it makes a shoe that is very durable, almost bulletproof. They describe the super fabric upper as resistant to things like barbed wire. And I believe it, because I've put these things through a lot of abuse and not a single thing is wrong with it. I mean, the eyelets are still there. Not even one of the little ribbed, raised portions on the super fabric has popped off. The heel, the sole, everything is just fine. Very slight amount of wear and tear, but they are durable. I mean, they're bulletproof. The other side of the spectrum would be the DSX Flyknit because this Flyknit material is much, much less durable, just very, very comfortable. These guys, flexible, light, feel good, but they fit a little differently than you'd expect. What they end up feeling like is tight around the laces, not so tight anywhere else. I found them to be pretty comfortable to wear, especially if you loosen up the laces a lot, but I could never quite get it so tight where it hugged my foot, especially around the middle of the foot. So that might be a deal breaker for some. For me, it wasn't that big of a deal. I don't really like my shoes to be super tight around my foot anyway, but just something to be aware of. In terms of best fit, I really enjoyed the Metcon IIIs. Now, there is almost no difference between the Metcon IIIs and the Metcon IIs, other than design. In terms of what it's made out of and the feel, it tends to feel about the same. It tends to perform about the same. There is slight differences, like if I wore one on my left foot and one on my right foot, I could tell you that there was something different about each foot. And the main things that I noticed had absolutely nothing to do with really like the core foundation of these shoes. The heel felt the same, tends to have the same flexibility as the Metcon IIs. The Metcon IIIs have the same solid heel as the Metcon IIs. They all feel about the same, but the difference comes in the upper. The upper here is this fly wire material. It's this mesh. It's a lot more breathable, and you can see there's actually a pretty clear difference if you put them side by side. The difference between what's going on this side of this shoe versus what's going on this side of this shoe, right? The outside of this shoe has a lot more breathability. It feels a lot better around the foot. It fits a lot better around that side of your foot. Whereas this almost feels like clunky. It was great when it first came out, felt really awesome, but only after you compare it to the threes, you really see that there's slight difference between where the twos weren't quite as good and how the threes improved on what was already a very good shoe. So we've got our running shoe, we've got our comfortable shoe that's kind of indestructible. We've compared our Nike Metcon 3s and 2s. Where do the Reebok Nano 7s fit? Well, I've gotten a lot of different feedback from my friends about this, and I myself am kind of torn about the Reebok Nano 7s for a couple reasons. One is I've always really liked the Nanos. In general, there was a couple iterations there that didn't really do it for me, specifically the 3s. I was not a big fan of the 3s. But in general, the Reebok Nano series has been a really solid training shoe. And the 7s carry that on. So definitely understand that the Reebok Nano 7s are a solid shoe. They fit very differently than any of the other shoes, where we have something like the Nike Metcons. The 2s and the 3s fit very similar. They have a decent amount of room, but not a gigantic toe box for your foot. And the other side of that spectrum is the Nobull, which has just so much room and never really tightens up around your foot. So you can kind of like feel your foot moving around constantly. The Nano 7s kind of have this like in-between portion. And what I mean by that is almost architecturally, it's designed that way. It hugs the middle of your foot in a really nice way, which feels comfortable. Your toes, they have a great amount of space to move around in and kind of spread and plant in. And across where your toes meet the body of your foot, there's this band that kind of hugs in there. And that is where I'm kind of torn with these shoes. They're very comfortable, they feel good, they take a little bit of time to get used to because of that band. I thought that was fine, and once I did get used to it, it actually felt really nice kind of holding on to my foot inside the shoe. And like, you know, the rest of these shoes, I've put these guys through a lot of abuse, and I didn't find any part of it where it was falling apart. Durability-wise, Reebok really nailed it with these shoes. And again, a lot of people kind of are weirded out by the design. They kind of like don't enjoy the like rainbow sherbet design going on here. I actually think it looks kind of cool. Doesn't bother me at all, but you know, I guess that's a personal preference. So if you were gonna be buying a pair of shoes, which one should you buy? That's a really good question. And all of them fit slightly differently. So given that you don't necessarily have a favorite brand that fits your foot better than the rest, or something that kind of removes others. So for example, if you're only doing a ton of workouts that have running in it, you probably wanna have the DSX Flyknit. Or if you have, you know, some sort of issue where you need a certain amount of support or a certain amount of looseness on the sole or around the foot, maybe you need a different shoe. But generally, I would say of these 5 pairs, the shoe that I like the most are the Nike Metcon 3s. I like the way that they look, I like the way that they feel. I've put the most amount of mileage on these guys and these guys. They both have held up extraordinarily well. I know a lot of people have issues with Nike's build quality. Sometimes they talk about how it falls apart on them. Like I said, I've put a lot of time and a lot of workouts in these guys, and I haven't had any of those issues. The soles haven't been peeling. Other than that little squeaky insole that they've got, I don't have any quality issues with these shoes. So if I was gonna be buying a new pair of shoes for CrossFit, for fitness, for functional fitness, I would be buying the Nike Metcon 3s. That's not to say that the other shoes don't have their place. A couple things that might convince you to look at these other pairs of shoes. One is the Nobulls are an acquired taste in terms of the aesthetics. I really like the way the Nobulls look, both the basic models and the more expensive printed models that have the different styles on them. Generally speaking, their design really knocks it out of the park. And if you're looking for something that's like really aesthetically pleasing and different than other shoes, the Nobull is your way to go. And on top of that, they are seriously the most durable shoe I've probably ever owned. I would imagine that buying this single pair of shoes, I wouldn't be forced to buy another pair of shoes for a very long time. These shoes are going to last me just fine in pretty much any workout environment where I wasn't doing long distance running. The only reason why I wouldn't do long distance running in it is because, like every other shoe here, the soles are just built more for kind of like that hybrid lifting, running, jumping type thing that we do in the gym. So if you're looking for something that looks a little different, fits a little different, but is gonna last you for a very long time, Nobulls are the way to go. And if you are going to be doing workouts that have a ton of running, I would suggest the DSX Flyknit. So there you have it. We have 5 shoes. Each one of them has its own little bit of flavor. Each one of them has their pros and their cons. And that was a very long video that you just sat through trying to figure out exactly what's going on. But lucky for you, I've worn all these shoes and I've tried all these shoes. That way, you don't need to spend all your money buying all of these shoes. Instead, spend all your money buying 5 pairs of the one shoe that you really like. Well guys, I'm Arm & Hammer with FloElite. These are 5 pairs of shoes that I've tried on so you didn't have to. And that is my super review of reviewed shoes that is full of reviews.